Hello, monsters and magical girls. My name is teasing, and the Star Guardians are back. Riot have just released this teaser for, well, presumably for a bunch of skins that are coming to the game. I know there's been leaks about who exactly it is, but I don't care, and please don't post about it in the comments. They've released this teaser for presumably some skins, but then maybe also some more stuff. It's a teaser for a whole event for the Star Guardians, apparently, which says to me that they're doing something a little bit more comprehensive. Like, maybe we'll get a full animated short. That would be cool. Maybe we'll get a visual novel or something. There's interesting things abound, probably. Here's hoping, anyway. But you're looking at the title of the video right now, and you're going, hang on, I'm looking at the trailer right now along with you, and you're saying you're going to do an animation breakdown of this? Like, there's only, like, 2 seconds of animation happening in it right there at the end. What the hell are you going to break down for animation? Well, funny you should ask that. We're going to talk about the animation of this teaser. There's more than you might think. And we're going to talk a little bit about, we're going to sort of speculate on the Star Guardians, what this new event thing is going to be about, because I think presumably a bunch of the clues, given that it's a teaser, will be in the animation itself. So let's get into it. And we open on this bird's eye view of Valoran City, which is the setting for Star Guardians. Like, this is where stuff is happening, this is what's going on. So we start with this establishing shot. This is where the main action of the rest of the teaser will be set. And the animation, as it were, of this particular opening shot is all... like, there's no character animation going on here as such. What we have got going on is we have this matte painting, which is like a fairly flat image, probably only in a few layers, hanging out in the background. Oops, clicked the wrong button there. Hanging out in the background. Then we have like a series of other still images, essentially, of these clouds that are layered over top of the scene. I would imagine within a 3D composited scene space where they can move the camera around freely, but each of these clouds, as you can see, move independently of each other, and as we pan downwards, we get other clouds coming up in front of the window. It's like, so the motion, the animation that's happening here is animating the perspective of the viewer, essentially. It's using the composition of the scene in order to create the illusion of depth and three-dimensionality for us as the viewer to move through by moving things in parallax with each other up and down and throughout the screen. This, too, is a form of animation. Like, it's not the most exciting form of animation. It's certainly not as technically complicated as, like, really expressive character animation, but this is animation. Like, moving stuff across the screen, giving the illusion of life, even if that, like, even it's not like life in the biological sense, but life in the sense of, oh, shit is happening, motion is happening, movement is happening, things are going on. That, too, is animation. And so there's a lot of animation happening on the camera, where it's sort of very gently, like, as you can see, shakes back and forth and rumbles as it falls down through the clouds, as though the wind is, like, shaking it from side to side as it's moving. So we start on this bird's eye view of the city like that, which then rushes down through the clouds with all these parallax effects scrolling past, and dumps us out in a room instead, which sort of, like, that transition instantly gives us the impression, okay, we shouldn't take what follows here quite literally, in a sense. Like, this is not like a literal fly-through of an environment. The perspective, it's not like someone fell down through the clouds and then immediately woke up in a room like that. This is dreamlike, right? Like, and you kind of get that too from the soft focus that's applied around the edges of the screen the entire time. And so what we get here is a montage of just like a series of disconnected moments in time, a series of disconnected scenes from all around this city that we've been established in that sort of do move through a theme, right? Because we begin in a room, presumably somewhere in someone's home, then we move to the street, then we move through the city, essentially, various locations in the town, then eventually we go past the cafe, then we approach the school from the front, we go through the doors, we go to the lockers, pick up our things, then we go to the music room, as it turns out, presumably to have some music lessons or something, then the classroom to have, like, regular class stuff, then eventually, during the break, up to the roof and out to like, hang out and do school teen drama stuff or whatever it is that people do in slice of life anime. So there is like a story being told here, like a story of sort of a day in the life kind of a thing. Like these are the normal places and steps that you'd go through in order to have a normal day in Valoran City. But it's all dreamlike logic. It's all sort of stitched together in this flash of recollection of like these individual isolated moments in time rather than like a continuous flow. But that's not animation, that's filmmaking. Let's talk about animation instead, because in this scene right here, The only animation that there really is this little wind chime that's hanging there with its Star Guardian motifs all over it and a bookmark that I think has... Is that Lux's mascot creature that's on that one? I'm not 100% sure. That's just kind of hanging out and doing very little. And the way that this thing is animated is this bulb and the little thing that's hanging down from it, that's essentially just like a 2D image. Well, it's probably layered in at least a couple of layers so that you can put it in front and behind of things. But this is like a flat 2D image that's not being changed from frame to frame. Instead, it's being moved around with motion tweening on the screen. And you can kind of see that in the way that it moves. Like it sort of just wiggles a little bit from side to side in the wind, but it doesn't do any of that slight boiling that you would see on something which is typically hand animated. On the other hand, more interestingly to me, the little chime, the little knocker inside of it, I think might be either 3D animated fully or some combination of 2D and 3D, because it looks to me like the knocker itself, and I can zoom in a little bit on it. That was not zooming in. That was the opposite of zooming in. There we go. I'm good at my job. We can zoom in on it a little bit. And what you sort of see when you look at it, you see that little telltale wiggle of a thing which seems to be drawn a little bit more carefully frame by frame. Like especially here, you see when the little tag bounces, how that thing seems to stretch just a little bit as well to sort of follow that motion and accentuate it. So I think the knocker might be 2D animated as well as the string. They seem to behave in that way, whereas the tag itself is so form perfect, the way that it's bouncing around, like it doesn't really seem to distort or change, that I would imagine that that's a 3D object that's being moved around in conjunction with the animation of the knocker. I'm not 100% sure. Like these things, at least for me, professional animator might have a more sharp eye for it, but at least for me, these things are hard to tell apart. But my point is, there's more happening in this scene than you might think, because the animation that's happening here is not character animation, but this is physics animation, which is to say, there's some wind blowing through this room right now. How would this little paper tag behave when attached to the end of like a wind chime like this? Like how would we show that sensation? Because what we want for this scene, like this scene is all about a dreamscape, right? It's all about conveying a series of moments in time and like the feeling, like what it feels like to be in this place at this moment. Like the quietness, the sort of coziness, this slightly eerie stillness, but still like the beauty of it all. And the sensation of, oh, it is important to this scene, this moment, that there's a mild breeze blowing through the room. In fact, wind and breezes seem to be a major theme, kind of running through some of the imagery that we're seeing here. And so the animator has to understand, like, when you are an animator, a character animator, what some of the stuff you have to understand is acting, right? Like you have to understand, how does a character act? How does a person express their emotions physically on their body? Like which ways do you move the body in order to express these things? When you're animating a thing like that, what you need to understand is physics, and not necessarily on a purely mathematical thinky formulas and equations level, but on a level of, how do I move this thing so that it feels like, oh yeah, that thing is flapping in the breeze, so much so that people won't even think about it. And indeed, first time you see this, you probably don't think about it. You probably don't think about the idea that the animator was like carefully thinking about, okay, we flap this thing over here, then there's a little bit of a lull in the breeze, and like this thing gets lifted up a little bit, so we squeak, like we wiggle the string a little bit, we hold it in the air, like you see how it kind of hovers in the air for just a second before then falling down again and bouncing back up. Like it uses just a little bit of what's called coyote time in animation, which is like, you know how Wile E. Coyote, he runs out over a cliff, but he doesn't fall down until he notices that he's run out over a cliff? That's coyote time. That's the principle of an animator suspending gravity for a second for the sake of expression, and that's what's being done here. The animator is suspending the normal functioning of gravity here in this physics animation just for a second to give the bounce just a little bit more pop, to give it a little bit more emphasis. So again, more animation happening in this scene than you thought. In this scene, most of the animation that you sort of notice immediately is the falling cherry blossom petals, which is so stereotypically anime that it hurts, but that's also completely fitting for Star Guardians. And here again, we are dealing with physics animation, and as far as I can tell, these are 3D animated objects, and one of the reasons why I think so is because this petal in particular moves so smoothly through the scene right here. Like, it moves on every single frame, and I get to explain frames as well, animating on 2s and 3s here. It moves so perfectly through the frame and maintains its shape so perfectly, at least as far as I can tell underneath all the blurring, that I'm reasonably convinced that this is like a 3D object that they're dropping through this composited scene in order to give the impression of what it is. But pay attention to something. You see how the pedal moves and the camera moves ever so slightly, like it's panning downwards or moving downwards, like it's rotating, whatever it's called in film language, when you do the camera and you slightly rotate it downwards in order to sort of, yeah. It's doing that on every single frame of animation. Every time I advance or return a frame, it's happening. Whereas, would you look at that? Some of the other cherry blossoms, the one in the background instead, only move every other frame. Now, if you've watched an animation breakdown of mine before, you will know the phrase animating on 1s, 2s, 3s, and 4s. Which means, if something moves on every single frame of the video, then it's animated on 1s. It's animated on every one frame. If it moves on every other frame, then it's animated on 2s, because every 2 frames it moves. If it's animated on 3s, it's even slower than that. If it's animated on 4s, it's even slower than that. And the number of frames you use to animate something generally determines how smoothly it moves across the screen. As you can see when we slow down here, the cherry blossom petals in the background become sort of janky and kind of shuffle along awkwardly, whereas here, this petal still maintains a pretty smooth and sort of lovely motion. That's the basic quality of animating on different frame rates, is you get different aesthetics of motion. And in the olden days, it used to be that you wanted to animate on every single frame, in principle, which would be like 24 frames per second or so, but you fucking couldn't, because that's 24 drawings every single goddamn second. Nobody has time for that. Nobody has budget for that. So the animators began to develop techniques to animate at 12 frames per second, which is animating on 2s, or even on 8 or 4 frames per second, which is animating on 3s and 4s. And that decision, like to learn to animate at more limited frame rates, to learn to animate in more limited capacities, to inventing what's called limited animation, where rather than animate the whole frame or the whole character in the frame every time, you just animate little bits and whatever bits and pieces need to move. Hanna-Barbera are very famous for this. Like if you take a look at Yogi Bear, when he talks, notice that his head only moves from the collar up. Like, he very rarely moves the rest of his body, and that's limited animation. You animate only the part of the character or the scene that's necessary to animate in order to get the effect that you're looking for. All of these principles, all of these aesthetics of animation combine over decades and decades and decades to become an aesthetic of what anime and animation is supposed to look like. So when that shows up in a trailer like this, where the flower petal here is very conspicuously animated on 1s, and the rest of the flower petals are very conspicuously animated on 2s, what that brings to mind is the variable frame rate animation that you see all the time in anime, where like characters will animate on 1s, 2s, 3s, or even 4s, depending on what they're doing and depending on how important they are in the scene. So when All Might is fighting the Nomu in that climactic moment from the first season of My Hero Academia, we've got a lot of animation on 1s and 2s going on. Like that's where they really crank up the animation budget. That's where they pump all of their effort into. That's where you get all that good Sakuga stuff. But when you have a background character who's doing something inconsequential, like way over in the background, he's kind of blurred, doesn't matter what he's doing, maybe we'll do him on 3s or 4s, because, like, who cares? He doesn't need to move smoothly. It's not important. And that's why, is the point I'm trying to get to, that's why the flower petals in this scene are moving at different frame rates rather than just moving at the same smooth frame rate, is because it's emulating the look of anime animation aesthetics. That's the second frame. The other thing that's happening in the background, of course, also, the power lines are moving, and they're moving again very, very gently in that breeze that's constantly been suggested by the imagery that's going on here. The flowers on the tree are moving ever so slightly, ever so gently. Again, these are just 2D images Like, these are essentially flat images. They're not 3D objects, but they're being manipulated with motion tweening by, like, just kind of dragging them in Photoshop and, like, moving them around, essentially. It's a little bit more complicated than that, but that's essentially what they're doing. They're deforming them, they're moving them around to provide the illusion of that gentle breeze through the trees, right? Moving on to the third frame. Here again, that tiny little suggestion of a wind happening, right? Like, you can see the little rippling going on the water. Now, the rippling on the water, that's the kind of thing I would sort of like. It is a form of animation because you're bringing motion into something, but it's not. No, actually, I was about to make a sort of a nice distinction. No, this is not real. No, it is real animation. Of course it is, you idiot. But it's just, again, it's a different form of animation. It's, again, the animator. And presumably there are plugins or automated versions of this that you can kind of use just to get, like, a rippling water effect. But the animator still has to make some choices about, like, what exactly and how much intensity you want in the wobbling in the water in this scene in order to give, again, that impression of, yeah, there's a light wind, there's a breeze blowing through the city. Not a squall, not like not a storm or anything, just a light breeze blowing through the city. So that wind comes back again. And another thing also comes back. You've noticed it, I'm sure. The shadow of the bird. We'll get to the bird. Which puts us on to the next scene. Again, the wind is in the image. The wind is blowing all the time. And the animation here, again, is all about these little ribbons that are attached to this wall of love locks. For those of you who are not familiar with the practice, love locks are, you take two, like, locks like this, you lock them together, or you write your name on it and, like, you attach it somewhere so that it can never be taken away, and it's sort of meant to be a symbol of your ongoing connection and love and devotion for each other. It's very annoying to city officials in the places where it's happening, and they really would prefer that people don't do it because it's expensive to have them removed. But you should do it all the time anyway, anytime you want to, because fuck them, it's your place to live and you can do what you want in it. But the animation that's going on here, obviously, is primarily these ribbons. And here again, you can see here, I am moving between 2 frames of animation, right? I don't know if you can hear my keyboard clacking away, but I'm moving between a couple of frames of animation, but nothing is happening in the frame because, again, these ribbons are being animated on 1, 2, 3. 1, 2, 3. 1, 2, 3. They're being animated on 3s, and they're being animated on 3s because, again, that mimics the animation aesthetic of anime, where something like this will often be animated on 3s. It gives it a particular aesthetic of movement that feels anime, that feels, oh yeah, that feels right for the purposes that it's meant to serve. Even though it would be, like, when it's a 1-minute teaser and you have as much money as Riot does, yeah, you could animate it all on ones. It's a couple of ribbons, it won't take that long. This is an intentional choice that's being made for aesthetic purposes. And here again, also, bird, and the bird shadow coming up over here. Like, we'll get to the bird. Then we get to this scene. Here again, the wind. Like, not necessarily present in the entire scene. You can see the trees are moving ever so gently. You can see the shadows and the light coming down oscillates ever so gently because, like, the wind is moving the leaves around. But here again, ribbon floating in the wind. And if we zoom in a little bit, let me see if I can do it right this time. Nope. There we go. I'm trying to type in 250%, but I keep typing in 20 instead. We'll just take a look at this right here. So you see how the fan itself is moving on every single frame? But again, the ribbon is animated at a different frame rate because aesthetic. It's the aesthetic that we're looking for. So the wind is present again in this scene as we move through this, like, lovely little back alley thing with some closed shops and stuff. It's nice. Then we get here, and here the wind is a little bit harder to see, but it's present there. In the little can or cup or whatever the hell this thing is that's sort of rocking gently back and forth on the floor, you see that sensation of, oh, okay, there's a light wind going through, just a light breeze coming through here. Almost like a wind of emptiness. Because as you've also noticed about all of these scenes is that even though we are in a giant city, and this seems to be like the middle of the day, there's no people anywhere, and in fact, it seems sort of strangely everybody's gone to the rapture, sort of depopulated, like everyone's just sort of suddenly vanished without a trace or explanation. I wonder if we'll talk about that later. Yes, we will. But here, it's all about the little cup on the floor. And I think this is a 3D object again. Like, I think this is a little bit of 3D animation, which with a very nice 2D texture painted onto it and some lighting. Because it's just lying there, and this she kind of wiggling back and forth in the wind. Other than that, not a lot to say about the motion or movement of the scene, but it is there. And we do the exact same thing over here with the little beach ball on the floor. That is, whoop, you can see, just gently wiggling back and forth in the, as it were, non-existent wind. And here we also get another element coming back, which is wetness, or specifically the sense that this is the city immediately after rain. And you can kind of see that here as well, like with the umbrellas that are put in stands behind here. Like, there's this implication from the puddle through here, where you can see like the glowing of water on the floor, to here with like the rain droplet falling off the flower, to here where you can really see like reflections in the floor, where it seems like, oh, this is the city immediately after it's rained. Kind of like there's sort of that vibe to it, like it's just been washed clean by a passing rainstorm, and now we're seeing sort of the fresh, beautiful, clean-washed city in the aftermath of that kind of vibe to it. But again, it's all about the ball. And again, here the ball, I think, is not a 3D object necessarily, but just a 2D object that's being rocked back and forth. But the animator, again, still has to make careful choices about how much, how quickly, with what speed, at what frame rate do we move this ball around in order to get the type of motion that we're looking for. And because this is very slow, this is very slight motion, like this is a thing moving very slowly and moving in very small degrees, the decision that's made about both the cup and the ball is animate them on ones, because we want that slow rocking back and forth smoothness. And if you animated that on twos or threes, you'd get something that was more jarring, that was more wiggly, like tick, 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 tick. That had a little bit too much suddenness in its animation, and we want slow smoothness here. So again, an animation choice is being made here. Then we come here, and here, like, the wind, again, is in evidence. You can see it in the way that the plants and flowers just sort of gently wiggle around. But the primary action of the scene, and it's action-packed, my friends. It's just, like, balls to the wall, pants around your ankles. Just, wow, shit is happening. Because it's a water droplet that falls off the leaf. Holy shit. I'm getting a little, over-enthusiastic, I feel. But, oh well. And once again, everything we've talked about before applies. The water droplet moves on 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, 1. Oh, there's a 5, actually. 5, 2. And then we get a little bit of differential animation where the water droplet falls off, then the leaf reacts, then the water droplet falls, then the leaf reacts, then the water droplet falls, where they sort of trade animation frames back and forth, which creates an illusion of smoothness in the frame and in the action without actually spending more frames on actually animating the thing that's happening. And it gives the plant, like, this nice little, like, there's a weight that's pulling down on me, creating tension, and then, whoop, I snap back. Like an elastic. Gorgeous. Like, and by the way, this is something I haven't talked about yet, but man, the colors and the rendering in all of this, abso-freaking-lutely gorgeous. Like, let me just, again, zoom in on the flower. Like, look at that rendering. Like, look at that soft dappling. Like, it's painted, essentially. Like they got people to essentially paint these backgrounds, which is something that you get in, like, high-budget anime, like anime that has a lot of budget for its background design. You get these painted, like, backgrounds, like, with limited animation happening on them, and, like, oh, I love it. Like, for me, this is gorgeous. Like, this is like watching an oil painting come to life kind of thing, and I love that shit. I'm a mark for it. Here, again, the wind playing in the plant's leaves. You can see particles floating through the air. Other than that, not much animation happening here. Just, again, that little moment captured in time. Like a feeling and a sensation of, oh, hey, like, this is a place at a particular moment that you'd sort of remember in a flashback. But 2 glasses of Coke, and I don't know that it's probably not actually Coke. They don't have clearance to use that brand. But 2 glasses of Coke essentially left, half finished, at the cafe, as though, and then this bag just lying there, and like a half-finished drink over there, as though whoever was supposed to be drinking it just left in the middle of it without saying anything, and without paying, probably. They're criminals. Maybe the Stark Guardians are supposed to catch all these criminals who dine and dashed at the cafe in the middle of the city. Who knows? Here again, our friend the bird is showing up, and here again we get to talk about animation frame timings, because the foreground, as we're moving across the city, panning across, you can see how this telephone pole at the front is moving to the left a little bit faster than the telephone pole farther behind. That's parallax scrolling again, giving us that sense and illusion of depth. But also, the camera, or rather the scene, moves on every single frame, but the bird... 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2. Like, the bird only moves every third frame. Again, giving us that anime sensibility of motion happening, even if there's not a lot of animation actually happening in the scene. Then we get here, and again, the wind, the gentle breeze flowing through is an evidence, because the leaves are not falling straight down, they are falling a little bit to the side. And you can also kind of look at the sky, and you can see, okay, that's kind of the sky that you'd have on a windy day, right? Like, that's not the sky that you'd have on, like, a very lazy summer afternoon where there's no wind whatsoever. Like, you got all these trails and, like, little wisps of cloud being broken free from the main body of the cloud. It feels like a windy day visually, at least to me. Same story here, same story here. Like, there's a little bit of itty-bitty tiny motion going on in this shot, which I didn't even notice the first time I saw it. But the little hatch on the locker is actually moving ever so gently. Like, it's ever so gently, sort of slowly opening itself or closing back together. I can't actually quite tell, but it's as though, again, someone was in the process of opening it when they suddenly vanished. And concurrent with that, we also have this little tiny tag hanging off of the locker right there that's also swaying ever so gently in that ever-present breeze. Here again, you see the little particles, you see the... Actually, maybe you don't see them because it's kind of zoomed out here, but... There, that little fucker, you see him? Him right there? Oh, wait, that's the... Not... There. And he is animated, by the way, on 2s. He's not animated on 1s, he moves on every 2 frames. But like little particles like this floating through the air, again giving that sense that the air is not still here, the air is in motion. And you get that as well in this scene from the little note sheet, like the little sheet music thing that's happening here, where you can see a little bit of a breeze just kind of pushing at the pages there at the side. Again, physics animation. The person who animates this needs to know how paper moves in a light breeze. Like, it's not just enough to just flab it around or those going. You have to study how does paper move in a light breeze, and then you have to recreate that so that when someone looks at that animation, it feels correct. Like, it seems like nothing, right? Like, this seems like fuck all. This shouldn't take any effort. Like, this should be the easiest goddamn thing in the world, right? Because it's just some paper flapping around or whatever. It's not a character expressing emotion. But no, there is difficulty to it. There is complexity to it, more than you might think. Now here, the wind is very obvious. Like, we get like the wind billowing in through the curtains. Again, I think these are are they actually? Hang on, can I get a closer look at that? Oh, I genuinely don't know if that's 2D or 3D animated. I cannot tell. I would have to be able to look a lot closer on them. Like, we'd have to have a shot much closer to them where I could see really whether these are 3D objects or whether they're just 2D painted surfaces with texturing and transparency effects on them. Either way, again, animators have to know how do things billow in the wind, which is a more complicated set of animations than you might think, because there's a lot of frequency to that. Like, you can see how these things billow, right? You can see how they billow almost like a sound wave a little bit, like the way that like there's literally waves going through them. You have to understand a little bit about the physics of that. Like, you have to understand, like, how does the weight of a curtain like that, when it's being pushed at by the wind, like the way that that push propagates down through the fabric, and the way that it like deforms the fabric as various bits of air push on various parts of it. You do have to study that shit. And once again, it seems to be animated on. Let's do the counting. Let's see. There. 1, 2, 3. 1, 2, 3. 1, 2, 3. 1, 2, 3. 1, 2, 3. 1, 2, 3. Animated on 3s once more. And they sort of play over the entirety of this classroom scene. Then we get here, where the breeze is indicated by that slow opening of the door, like as though it's being gently pushed open by something as we move in here. And here we get like a gust of wind. Like, here's where we really get like a push, a sudden like, whoosh, a sudden whoosh of wind, which is expressed in 3 petals breaking off of this particular flower. 3 things breaking away from 5. 5. How many Star Guardians were there in, like, those Star Guardian teams? And now 3 of those petals are breaking away from the flower, which is like pink, which is the same color as the hair of that character over there. And they're sort of flying past her, and like she's turning around and seemingly kind of shocked by that. I wonder what that could mean. It probably means something, but I'm too stupid to understand it. Anyway, animation breakdown. So the flower is the main action that's happening here, right? Like, if you pay attention, you can kind of also see that the other flowers are moving a little bit, like they're also wiggling around in this breeze that's popping out. But the main action is this flower, which is hand frickin' animated, which I think is genuinely kind of impressive. And the way that you can tell, at least in this case, pay attention to these leaves. Do you see how they boil a little bit? Like how they don't quite keep a 100% consistent shape from frame to frame. Just like there's just a little bit of wiggling. There's just a little bit of variation in like the consistency of their shape language. That is because when you hand animate something, it's always going to be a little bit imperfect. That's the difference between 2D and 3D animation in a lot of ways, is that a 3D character, unless you intentionally break the model, unless you intentionally change something about the shape of the model, if you rotate a 3D character in space, it's going to be perfect. Like, it's going to keep its exact proportions perfectly in every single frame that you're moving it on. Like, there's never going to be any changes. Nothing is ever going to jitter. There's never going to be any boiling. There's never going to be any change from frame to frame. It's going to be the exact same character from a slightly different angle. In 2D animation, everything is a new drawing. So a person, a human being, has to redraw the thing over again. And we can get really, really good at that, especially with computers, copy-pasting, like doing all kinds of things with digital tools especially. And just with craft and care and attention, we can get really, really, really good at replicating something from one frame to another, but we will never be perfect. And that's part of the charm of hand-drawn animation to me, is looking for the little flaws and the little mistakes. Like the one I've spotted right here, Mr. Animator. You thought you could hide it from me, but I see you. I see the flaws. I see all of your sins, and I shall expose them to the public. You see that little bit of line there? That little bit of little itty bitty bit of something poking into the flower right there, and into the flower right there. Oh, they vanished. Look at that. They vanished all of a sudden, and that is a tiny, tiny, itty bitty, minuscule, completely insignificant, and not at all meaningful animation, air quotes, mistake. It's a little thing that happens when a person is putting the lines down on paper, putting in the colors, making sure that things mask out properly. Little things like that happen here and there that gives hand-drawn animation like its charm and its feeling, and the way that you can sometimes identify hand-drawn animation to a specific artist because they make a particular kind of charming little mistake, which I adore. Like, this flower is really well animated too. Again, there's this thing of like, it's not enough to know how to animate a person. You also have to know how to animate like a flower with relatively thick petals that's being moved by a sudden breeze that's sort of coming a little bit from below. And like, you can see how the animator is like gently rotating the flower as it's being pushed by the wind. Like, you can see how it's gently being rotated just a little bit as the petals get torn off. Like, there's a lot of detail going on. There's a lot of hard work that went into making this flower, when it's animating, look exactly right to the scene that's being portrayed. And I just, it's so cool. And here again, hey, would you look at that? We have a differential set of animation timings here. So we have 1, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3. Waltz with me, kids. 1, 2, 3, 2, 3, 1, 2, la da 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 da. Da 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 da. We're waltzing. And pay attention to the difference between how the character is animated here, because they are animated on... Yeah. So here we get another... now we actually get to talk about character animation. We can talk about something fun. So pay attention here. Right? You see that? Like how like between these two frames, how her hand suddenly gets a little bit more detail, how like all of a sudden her shoulder sort of emerges from out, like this like this tuft of hair just sort of appears over her shoulder where it wasn't before. And like things sort of move around like that. And that's just all the animator going, yeah, no, don't worry about it. That tuft of hair that slid down from her shoulder in between these two frames, you didn't see it, that's fine. Don't worry about it. And that's how hand-drawn animation works. And I love it. Like, it's so cool to see these things when you look at them up close. Like the way the hair almost behaves like a liquid. And she is animated primarily, I believe, on 1, 2, 1, 2, 1, 2, 1, 2. Yeah, she primarily animated on 2s. And that goes for her pendant as well. Right up until, you see here? You see how the light effect that transitions us into the logo comes in? And then right around here, like right when the light fully encloses the shape of the pendant, all of a sudden, animated on 1s, animated on every single frame. Because as we transition out of the pendant swinging, we want the swinging pendant to have that anime feel, right? Like animating that at 24 frames per second or 30 frames per second, as the case might be. A little bit too much. That would be a little bit too smooth, probably, for the aesthetic that we're going for. But once it becomes an effect, once it becomes a visual effect instead, well, just gently swap over to animating on every single frame so that the frame rate of the effect here that's coming in to join the logo is the same frame rate as the animation on the logo itself, because that's not animated with an anime aesthetic, that's animated with a technical logo aesthetic instead. And oh hey, there's like 3 stars on the logo there. Kind of like how there were 3 petals that flew away. It's almost as though the name, the number 3 has some kind of significance. Huh. Weird. But anyway, that's all of the interesting little animation details about how you make a series of scenes like this that feel alive, that feel like something's happening in them, that feel like they have a little bit of a breath of life in them, but which are also still. And this is something I believe is stillness is every bit as much part of animation as motion is. And this is something like you can see that reflected in, like, especially Ghibli movies are very fond of doing this. Like Ghibli movies, especially directed by Hayao Miyazaki, have these moments of complete stillness, like just silence where nothing is happening except just like you're forced to sit in a moment with the feeling of a place or a scene, like a little bit of wind blowing, like just a little bit of ambient sound, giving you the impression of like being here in this moment and taking the moment in. And especially like My Neighbor Totoro is a great example. It's full of it, but Spirited Away has it, Princess Mononoke has it. Like all of the Hayao Miyazaki movies tend to have these moments in them. And there's some of the best things about like the feeling of those films and movies. And it's something that's filtered down from Ghibli, which is massively influential, of course, into the general aesthetics of anime, to where like you'll get these scenes in slice of life things all the time. You'll get these like static shots of like a place, like an embankment near a canal or an underpass or a road or something, like where you get like just a bit of ambient sound and just stillness, nothing happening, maybe a car moving in the background kind of thing. Like that's the vibe they're going for here, right? Stillness is every bit as much part of animation as motion is. Choosing when not to move something, when to restrict movement, when to impose quiet is every bit as much a part of creating a mood, of creating a vibe, of creating even characters, as deciding when they move is. Like, this is genuinely something I believe very strongly, and you can see a little bit of why doing that might be more complicated than you think in a trailer like this, because like they could have just posted like no motion whatsoever. They could have just, if they had just done stills, right? Like stills with no motion, like with no the pedals moving around ever so gently on the surface of the water, no like ribbons flapping in the wind, just stills where like you sort of pan across. It's not the same, right? Like it's not the same if the images are just standing still. It's not the same. There is a sensation, a feeling of life to these otherwise almost completely static images. And that sensation of life is being imparted by these little tiny touches, these little insignificant nothings that seem like they shouldn't matter. They give the scene life, a feeling of being a place that is alive, even if it's very quiet. So like, that's why I say stillness is part of animation too. And this trailer is a great example of it. Like, I wouldn't... Like, this trailer isn't like a transcendent masterpiece from beyond the dimension of human capability. No, it's just good. Like, it's just a good example of how to do that, and I really like it. So, after 40 minutes of me talking about the animation happening in still images where practically nothing is moving, let's do some good old-fashioned Star Guardian speculation. Now, this is not going to be me going through all the Easter eggs and stuff that are in this trailer, and I'm sure there's 100 billion of them, because I'm really not the guy for that. I'm not very good at Easter egg hunting like that, and sort of seeing all the little cameos and stuff. I just don't have the brain for it. Nikrit and Dinka K are way better at doing that than I am, and you might want to check out their videos on these teasers if they release any. As for me, what I want to talk about is what seems to be thematically going on here. So we'll talk about the damn bird, for example. But the thing I first note is that the teaser here is not called Return of the Star Guardians or New Heroes Rise or whatever. It's not really called any of that. What it's called is Return to Valoran City. So a return to the place of Valoran City, not so much to the Star Guardians themselves. And that's just a titling, maybe that doesn't mean so much. But then the teaser itself, as you can look at and see right now in front of you, the teaser itself is this cavalcade of showcasing the place of Valoran City, like the places, the locations that exist within Valoran City. And so both the teaser's title and the teaser's imagery focuses on the location rather than the characters, which tells me, okay, so maybe there's more to it than just like, oh, it's just because we don't want to show the character skins yet. Maybe there is something going on with Valoran City, the place itself. And looking at the images and like the things that are being showcased, all of these places, they look like the backdrops that you'd see in a visual novel. Like they look like the kinds of locations that you'd see in a visual novel. They look like the kind of places that a visual novel might take place when it's like a slice of life drama visual novel kind of thing. It could also it's also all the locations of like a slice of life high school drama anime. But if Riot had made an actual anime, I feel like they would be promoting a lot harder than just like a teaser trailer now. Like if they had actually made like a serialized full core of anime or whatever, I feel like they'd be pushing a lot harder on the marketing for that than just a teaser trailer like this. So I don't think it's an anime. It would be cool if it was. It's a natural fit for Star Guardians. I don't understand how they haven't at least like started an official Star Guardian manga or something, like a comic, which seems like such a natural thing to do with them. But yeah, like this could theoretically be a teaser for something like that, but it's not. It's not gonna be. So the thing that I think is most likely is it's also not gonna be like a bespoke League of Legends game mode. Like it's not gonna be the return of Star Guardian Invasion, unfortunately, which like Riot insists that, oh, well, people engage very highly with modes like Star Guardian Invasion early on, and then they drop off and they don't return to play the game mode over and over again, and that's bad. That means the game mode isn't very fun, which, like, they publish these graphs of, like, engagement with Nexus Blitz and Odyssey and the Star Guardian mode. It's like, oh, people don't keep playing all the time forever? Oh, failures! The modes are failures! They're not worth doing anymore! Which, like, how about, like, maybe they just played it for some times, and then they had a really satisfying and engaging experience with that, and then they were like, ah, that was nice, I'm happy with that, I'm ready to move on with something else in my life. Like, maybe it's a good thing that they didn't get obsessed and play it over and over and over again, right? I'm just saying, like, that's maybe a thing. But anyway, probably not going to be a game mode, because Riot has pretty decisively communicated that they don't give a shit about doing game modes anymore, because they don't provide them with the engagement metrics that they want. Which is the other thing, is like, the other reason why I think that it's likely to be some form of a visual novel is that that's a format that Riot has worked with before. They have a bunch of experience working with visual novel formats. They have a lot of people internally at Riot who are very enthusiastic about visual novels and who push that format specifically as a method of delivering narrative. We saw that with Spirit Blossom to great success. We saw that with Sentinels of Light to not so great success. That was actually kind of terrible. And now maybe they're taking a third stab at it to try and see if they can nail the formula down and sort of really get it right. That would be cool, so long as, and I want you to pay attention to this, right? So long as the visual novel part isn't tied to playing a certain number of League of Legends Summoner's Rift games. So long as the visual novel isn't being used as a way to push people into repetitively grinding for points over and over and over and over again in normal games, that would be cool, because that was the worst, most predatory and ugly part of Sentinels of Light, was that the entire visual novel existed not to tell its own story, not to do anything interesting or deliver a narrative. It existed to be a means to force people to play as many League of Legends games as possible, to grind the shit out of those points, to engage with the ecosystem, to get engagement metrics. Much in the same way that Riot said, oh, Star Guardians mode is a failure because people don't repetitively play it over and over and over again. They tried with the visual novel to make it a means to make people play as many games as possible, and it became predatory and ugly, and what's, well, not worse, but what's maybe worst about it from a narrative perspective, it fucking destroyed the pacing of the narrative in the visual novel itself, because it was constantly being interrupted by these out-of-nowhere stupid prompts to, oh shit, we have to manufacture a conflict in the middle of this story beat so that you have to go and play 15 games in normal mode in order to defeat this undead that suddenly popped up in the middle of the story scene. Oh, better defeat him by playing normal games. Fuck off and come back when you're done. So, like, yeah, a visual novel to me seems like the most obvious and the most likely, but it comes also with some trepidation about the ways that Riot have fucked up visual novels before, and the bad lessons they might have learned from that, because, ooh, I'm worried about that. Anyway, some themes. Let's talk about the damn bird. I promised that we'd talk about the damn bird. We open on this shot of Valorant City from high, high, high above. And this is a bird's eye view of the place. And then, as we discussed during the animation breakdown part of this video, we move through first the room. I think this is Lux's room, probably, or which one of them is it that has a bunny for a mascot? Can't remember. Jinx? It's someone's room anyway, where it seems to be following, like, where it goes from the room to the street, like through the streets of the place, past this fence, past these alleyways, past like the vending machines, flowers, cafe, the middle of the city, then to the school, then into the school, then through the music room. And so, like, it follows this whole journey, and what it kind of looks like is that this is someone who's following this character, whoever it is, Lux, or it's probably not Ari, Lux, probably, following this character around, looking for them to find them. So what I take from this is that the narrative, like the action that's being shown here, is that this bird has arrived at Valorant City, and then it's going looking for, let's just say it's Lux. So first it goes to her home, it goes to the streets where she usually walks, it follows her all the way to school looking for her, and the scene that we get at the very end, here, when the camera dashes forward and there's this gust of wind, that's the bird finally finding her and, like, dashing towards her in order to find her, in order to get to her, and then it kills her, and wears her skin as a suit. Why the fuck did I say that? No, it doesn't. I think that's what's being communicated here. The other thing is, as we noted during the animation breakdown, is that the city is empty. Like, this is clearly big city, a lot of people supposed to be there, but a whole lot of not many people there at all. Somehow, just empty, no people or persons anywhere. Drinks half finished, left behind, cups just lying on the floor, discarded as though someone, like, just threw it there for no reason, like a ball just hanging out in the street. Drinks unfinished. We get to the school, and it's like fully everybody's gone to the Rapture kind of thing, where like everything that people own, all their stuff, is left behind, like this hairband, these glasses, like this bag that's lying around over there, and everything in the classrooms, as though someone was just sitting there a second ago doing schoolwork, and now everyone's all gone. That's interesting, because I think maybe we're supposed to take that literally. Maybe we're supposed to literally take this to mean that everyone in Valorant City is gone, and part of the action of the visual novel or the anime or like whatever it is that they're going to do for Star Guardian is going to be figuring out where the hell they are and what the hell happened. And there is a clue as to where the hell they are and what the hell happened, which is this. This is a teaser image that Riot posted on Twitter for the upcoming Star Guardian thingy whatever. And I'd like to draw your attention to this bit right here. This floating city in the sky, like this mirror image of the Valorant below that's sort of reaching down from the stars above to touch Valorant City. So we have this idea of a mirror universe kind of being presented to us in this teaser right here, which is something that comes back a little bit in the teaser itself. Like, and this is something I go back and forth on a little bit, because it's not everywhere, but it's in a lot of places. Like, every single shot has the wind, like we talked about. Like, that's everywhere. But then there's reflections. Like, we have reflections in the window here, reflections in this little wind chime ball. We have reflections from the mirror hanging over the street here. We have the reflection of, like, the upside-down city in the water of this puddle. And then the reflections go away for a second and don't really come back until we get to the shop. We can see reflections in like, the floor of the shop, and a little bit of reflection in, like, the wet floor after the rain out here. You can see some reflections, for example, in the, like, the stone tiling down here. Then there's, like, the windows of the school, which are reflecting the world outward. Like, so there's a presence of reflections as a repeated visual motif in this thing. But they're not 100, like, you can see reflection in here as well, but they're not 100% consistent across every single shot. Like, arguably, you could say there's reflections in the glasses here, maybe, sorta, kinda, but it's not strong enough for me to really draw a conclusion from that. But along with the mirrored upside-down city from the teaser, I'm starting to think that there's maybe something to that. That, like, the plot of the thing is that everyone's gone from Valoran City because they've been taken to, like, this alternate dimension place, whatever, and it has left poor Lux all alone in her own world. And so the plot, like, the action of the thing that they're releasing, whether it's a story or whatever it is going to be about her trying to find where everybody she cares about has gone to. Like, it's going to be about the restoration of broken relationships, which is where we get to the flower that's sitting right in front of us here. Because the flower here, 5 petals all united as one on the flower, but then 3 petals are torn away from it and blown away and sort of vanish from it. And with this severing of the wholeness of the flower, we get this shock reaction from our dear protagonist, like turning around suddenly as though startled by something, which tells me, okay, so if Lux is all alone in the world, then maybe the thematic action of the thing that's happening is she needs to restore her relationships with the other Star Guardians. Like, she has alienated them, somehow become alienated from them. Like, there's some kind of rift in their relationship or in their feelings for each other, which is the thing that they need to cohere as a team. And so the action is about, like, as Lux is alone in the world, she has to find other people, forge connections with them, and thus restore the world to its proper state, i.e., like, the restoration of relationships restoration of the world as a metaphor for the restoration of relationships and overcoming of loneliness, right? And that is also something that's hinted at a little bit throughout a lot of the images here, because here is a picture of 2 characters together in, like, this little I keep saying Instagram because it's a Polaroid. Instagram based their aesthetic on Polaroids. It's a Polaroid is what they're called. This little tiny picture that's hanging on the thing. And that's also present here. Like, we talked about the love locks. These locks are symbols of everlasting relationships. Specifically Saya and Rakan here, but, like, there's a lot of them around. This is a lot of imagery of, like, relationships being tightly knit and like, tied together forever by bonds of destiny kind of thing. And that comes back also, like, as we head into the school, like, as we see here, for example, like, again, we have these 2 people who were clearly sitting at this cafe table having a drink together. Like, that too is sort of relationship-ish imagery. But more specifically, whoop, went a little bit too far, the locker, which I think is Lux's locker, with all these pictures and images, like all these little stickers and decorations and like all these little reminders and pictures of the people whom she has relationships with, like her friends, like the people that she cares about. And that's also something that I feel like comes through here in these images. Like, this feels like a place that you'd be, like, to develop connection and relationship with other people. You see, again, the stickers of the Star Guardian little mascot pets. And the same thing here, like, it feels like what's being shown here is a void, like a lack of relation, like a lack of connection to other people. And so maybe the main action of the thing is all about restoring those connections. Like, that would be at least the thematic takeaway I would take from a teaser like this. So yeah, to sum up, it's probably going to be a visual novel. I really fucking hope it isn't predatory and shitty and manipulative the way the Sentinels of Light is. And it seems to have something to do with Lux being alone and having to restore her relationship. There's also, I don't know what to really make of this. Because I'm not sure if it's a thing I noticed. I don't know what to make of it. But if you look here, look at that little thing in the back, like this little shape, whatever it is. You see that? Like, it looks like it blinks, right? And I don't know if that's just a couple of particles that were supposed to float through the air that are glitching somehow, or if that's completely intentional. It's a teaser, so it's probably intentional, which means that whatever this thing is, it's like a creature. Maybe it's one of the... Maybe it's the bird. Like, maybe it's the bird that's been flying around. Maybe that's just crouching there at the back of the alley, staring out at you. Maybe that's what's going on. I don't know. I don't know what the significance of this is at all. I just noticed it sitting there and blinking, and I don't know what it means. I lost my train of thought there. Right, it's probably going to be about the restoration of broken relationships. At least that would be my prediction based on the teaser. And there's going to be the opportunity to go out and explore Valorant City itself in some way, shape, or form over the course of it. Yeah, I think that's about all. And that turns this into a 55-minute video about a 1-minute teaser with almost no animation in it. Lovely. Welcome to the channel if you've never been here before. You can like, comment, and or subscribe if you want to, because even though I just spent a little bit of time excoriating Riot for, like, using their visual novel to push engagement metrics that should be meaningless, I have to push the engagement metrics as well because I work on YouTube and that's the only thing that matters to the platform here. So if you want to like, comment, and or subscribe, I'd appreciate the engagement. It really genuinely does help. I have a Patreon, a merchandise store, and a tip jar. And if you don't want to do engagement metrics, you can support me there by giving me money. Basically, I'm asking you to give me money. If you have it, like if you have enough money that it's not a problem, and you want to because you like the videos that I do on this channel or on my other channels, you can support me via those means. But if you're not in a position to be able to do that, or you don't want to, it's fine. Like, genuinely, please don't worry about it. It is completely okay. But I do have to ask, because if you don't ask, then people, like, don't know to do it. So yeah, outside of that, I mean, like, wash your hands, take your vaccines, and try to be nice to people. Like, have solidarity with those who are worse off than yourselves, because, you know, it's the only way we make the world any better. You know, restore those connections and stuff. I tried to tie it into the subject of the video, but it didn't really kind of work there. Anyway, thanks for watching.